Earlier we classified the solids depending upon that the arrangement of particles into three categories, that is the crystalline, amorphous and polycrystalline, right. So depending upon the arrangement, you can say, we classified the solids into three categories. One is the crystalline, right, other is the amorphous, and we studied that there is a form which exists between two, that is the polycrystalline. But I told you that in this chapter we won't be taking polycrystalline forms, because we will be just calling polycrystalline as the crystalline ones only, right. Now we are in a position to know that what are the types of crystalline solids. Crystalline solids are not of a single type. First thing you have to keep in mind that crystalline solids are not of single type. They exist in different types. So we are going to study the different types of crystalline solids. So when we talk about different type of crystalline solids, we divide crystalline solids on the basis of strength of intermolecular force. Right. Now what we are doing, we are just dividing, like we say that first thing is that crystalline solids are not of single type. I think it's correct, right. Now the second thing is that we divide crystalline solids into different categories, and you know what is the basis of the classification? That is something, the strength of intermolecular force, right. The type of force that exists between them, right. Intermolecular force is something, the force which exists between the molecules, as the name suggests. Inter means in mid of, molecular means in mid of molecules, force, that means the force, attractive or repulsive, right. So depending upon the strength, whether it is weaker force or whether it is stronger force, we classify crystalline forms into different categories. So just look at the board that what are those types in which crystalline solids have been classified. So crystalline solids have been, I'll write here, crystalline solids have been divided into many categories. One is the molecular solid, right. Second category is ionic solid. Third category we have is depending upon the strength. All those divisions are depending upon the strength of the intermolecular force, right. Third category is metallic solid, and the fourth category is covalent solid. So depending upon that the force that exists between the molecules is a stronger or a weaker, we classify the crystalline solids into subtypes, that is the molecular solids, ionic solids, metallic solids and covalent solids. See, so this molecular solid, if we talk about this molecular solid, it is further divided into different categories, and that categories are polar molecular solid, non-polar molecular solid, and the third is hydrogen bonded molecular solid. Right. So that means this molecular solid has been classified into subtypes, that is the polar molecular solid, non-polar molecular solid and hydrogen bonded molecular solid. But if we talk about the ionic solid or metallic solid or covalent solid, these three types do not have any subdivision, right. Keep in mind only the molecular solid have been classified into subtypes, that is the polar, non-polar and hydrogen bonded. Otherwise if we talk about ionic, metallic and covalent, they are not classified into any subtype, they exist as such. Now if we talk about the constituents, that means the constituents which are actually forming molecular solid or ionic solids or metallic or covalent, you should be familiar that what actually are the particles. As I told you that the particles of the crystalline solid is obviously atom, molecules and ions. But as we have now different forms, so that means they will be having different constituent particles. So just see that what are actually their constituents. So if we talk about molecular solid, whether it is polar, whether it is non-polar or whether it is hydrogen bonded, the constituent is going to be molecules. That means it is formed of only molecules. And if we talk about ionic solid, I think it's clear from the name, it is ionic solid. So that means the constituent particles are obviously ions. And when we talk about metallic solid, again it is clear from the name that it includes metallic substances, or you can say metallic particles, or you can say metal ions. I'll write metal particles, right. And for covalent solid, you know that covalent bond is generally formed between non-metal and non-metal. So obviously it is formed of non-metals. So, if we talk about constituent particles, I think it's clear because in crystalline solids we get to see only 3 particles. One is atom, one is molecule, and one we have is ions, right? So, in molecular solid the constituents are molecules. In ionic solid it is ions. In metallic solids it is metallic atom, you can say, and in covalent solids it's non-metal atom. Right. So, these are the constituents. But before we start with the detailed study, as these divisions are merely based on the intermolecular force, right. So, you should know that actually what is intermolecular force, or you can say what kind of intermolecular force we get to see in nature, right. So, just leaving this topic here, we will continue later. So, just leaving this topic here, I am just going to start with the intermolecular force so that I can correlate those forces here, and I can explain you that what kind of this thing force is existing here, right. So, when we talk about intermolecular force, so again as the name suggests, it is formed of intermolecular force, right. That means the binding energy, you can say, that is the binding force that is existing between the molecules, right. Inter means mid, molecular means between molecules, force is again means the attractive or the repulsive interaction between them. So, intermolecular force is something, the force that exists between the particles. That particles can be atoms, that can be molecules, or that can be ions, right. So, we get to see that whenever there are so many particles present, there are a certain kind of force that is operating between them, right. That force can be attractive, you know that force can be attractive, and that force can even be repulsive. Like if it result in the this thing, if it makes the particles come closer, that means it is an attractive force. If it do not allow particles to come closer, so that means it is a repulsive force, right. So, we get to see a certain kind of force, it's clear, but the nature of force can be attractive or repulsive, right. So, whether it is attractive or whether it is repulsive, right, whether it is attractive or whether it is repulsive, the force that exists between the molecules is this, like the sum of attractive and the repulsive force comes out to be van der Waals force, right. That means all those attractive forces which are operating in the molecules, or all those type of repulsive forces, if we say, are operating in the molecules, the total sum of those attractive and repulsive molecules is called as van der Waals force, right. And somehow you should know that van der Waals force is a weak force. It is not so strong force, it is a weak force, right. Now, this van der Waals force is not a only force, there are subcategories that exist in case of van der Waals force. So, just let us see that van der Waals force, as I told you, that van der Waals force is actually a sum of attractive and repulsive forces, right. It is clear to you. So, what kind of forces are just you can say a part of van der Waals force? So, these are, I am just separating the board here so that you can know in a better way. So, what kind of forces? So, when we talk about van der Waals force, 3 kinds of forces are observed under it, right. Now, what are those 3 kinds of forces? One is dipole force, right. Other is dipole induced dipole force, and third, last but not the least, is this thing, the London force, also called as dispersion force. You can call it by either name, as London force or dispersion force. So, as I told you, again I am repeating, see, intermolecular force is something, the force which is operating between the molecules, right. Now, the nature can be attractive, the nature can be repulsive. So, whether it is attractive or whether it is repulsive, the total sum of forces which is operating is something called as van der Waals force, right. Van der Waals force, if it's somebody to ask you about the nature of van der Waals force or how strong is the van der Waals force, so you should know that it is not so strong, it is just a weak force. Now, van der Waals force is categorized into different categories, that means different kind of forces falls under this main category, and that forces are dipole, dipole induced dipole, and London force, right. Now, I am just going to make you familiar with these kind of forces, because as you have studied this in 11th, but still I think that you must have forgot or you must be in doubt in certain kind of topic. So, I am just revising in a short span of time so that you should be familiar with the term I am going to use when I am going to explain this molecular solid. right? So first we start with London force, right? So what happens in London force? First thing you should know that London force exists between the particles which are non-polar, right? So it exists between the particles which are non-polar. Now if I say polar and non-polar, I think you got it, that you know that what is polar or non-polar. Again I am just going to explain you in a short span, because here I am going to use the word polar and non-polar, and I don't know you that are you familiar with that or not, because you did this polarity or this thing dipole moments in the previous classes, but still for a short span of time I am just taking 2 minutes and just going to explain these terms before I start with this type. See, what is polar and non-polar? See what happens if we get to see a certain kind of covalent bond between them, between a particle, right? That I see a molecule in which the two atoms are bounded by covalent bond, right? Then what happens if the size out of these two is one is small? Suppose I say this is A and this is B, right? And B is smaller than A, right? So B is smaller than A. This is assumed, right? So what happens? Being smaller, that means it is more electronegative. It is more electronegative. What do you mean by electronegativity? You know that it is a power to attract shared pair of electron more towards itself. So it is assumed that if it is electronegative, that means it is attracting this shared pair which should lie in mid of these atoms is slightly displaced towards this atom. Because it is smaller in size, it is more electronegative than A, right? So it has the power to attract the shared pair towards itself. So it is just attracting the shared pair towards itself. And when it attracts the shared pair towards itself, what happens? Obviously the negative, this thing is surrounded by more negative charge, that means electron density increase. So we say that it requires partial negative charge. You know that the electrons are negatively charged, so obviously the intensity of negative charge is increased because it has attracted the shared pair, right, more toward itself. So that means it is going to acquire partial negative charge. Now if we talk about A, then what happens? The electrons are just moving away from A. That means there is a certain kind of positive charge that develops around it. So we say there is a certain kind of positive charge. So otherwise this molecule A and B was neutral, because I told you that they are bounded by a covalent bond, and they are this shared pair was in mid earlier when we were talking. But when I told you that this B is smaller in size, it is in electronegative, that means it is attracting shared pair towards itself, and when it is attracting, it is increasing the negative charge density. That is why it acquired partial negative charge and it becomes deprived of electrons, so it acquired partial positive charge. And when you get to see the charges develop in a molecule, that means it is something polar in nature. We call it as polar. But if I say that this A and B, if we talk about the size or if we talk about the electronegativity, suppose I say that their electronegativity is exactly same, right? So what is going to happen? Nothing is going to happen. The shared pair is going to remain in the mid. It won't be get attracted more towards B, or it won't be displaced towards A. And because it is not displaced, so that means we are not going to get this partial negative and positive charge, right? So that means it is going to be called as non-polar molecule because it doesn't have any kind of poles. Simple, right? So I think you are familiar that what is polar. So it's simple. A polar term is that it has got the two poles separated by certain distance, and here you in non-polar you don't get to see certain kind of charges. Neither you can say the magnitude means of no magnitude. There is no charge at all, right? Now I'm just going to use these terms while explaining van der Waals force. I think you are clear with polar and non-polar. So see, now our concern is van der Waals force. As I told you, the sum of attractive and repulsive forces both club to form the van der Waals force, and it is obviously a weak force, and it is divided into three categories: dipole-dipole, dipole-induced dipole, and third is the London force. I was explaining you London force, right? So see, this London force get operated in molecules which are non-polar, right? You are familiar that what is non-polar means there are no kind of charges between them. Suppose I take an example of oxygen molecule. Oxygen molecule is like that, and it has got electrons here and here, because octets are complete, right? Now what happens, it is a non-polar obviously, because oxygen and oxygen, both oxygen are going to have the same electronegativity. That means shared pair is going to stay in the mid, means equal attraction for, equal atom have equal attraction for the shared pair, right? Now what happens, in it a temporary displacement of electron take place, temporary. Keep in mind, it's temporary, just a temporary, right? So this temporary displacement of electron means, like it should be like that, but what happens, however, due to temporary displacement, these electrons move towards this side. Means earlier which electrons were present here, they got slightly displaced towards this oxygen atom, right? And this displacement is only temporary, right? So what happens, because those electrons went that side, that means they are increasing electron density here. So it is acquiring a partial negative charge, and likewise it is acquiring a partial positive charge. So that means this molecule, because even this temporary displacement occur, but still this you can say the molecule became a kind of, it possessed a dipole now, right? Even though the strength is small, but still it possesses a certain kind of charge, right? Now what happens, it will attract the neighboring molecule in this way. Suppose I tell you that there is another oxygen molecule where the displacement has taken place, a temporary displacement, right? So that means it has also acquired a partial negative and positive charge, right? So the attraction that exists between them, this is something called as the London force, right? So keep in mind, London force operates in a molecule which is non-polar in nature, but due to temporary displacement of the electron, it becomes somehow polar, even though the charge is small, the magnitude of charge is small, but still because it develops certain kind of partial positive or negative charge, that means it is attracting the another molecule, and that force that exists between two non-polar molecules due to temporary displacement of the electron is something called as London force or the dispersion force, but it is a weak force, keep in mind, right? So this is what is the London force. Now when we talk about dipole force, so as the name suggests, dipole means two poles, that means it is a force which exists between two polar molecules. Suppose I have two polar molecules, HCl, in which there is partial negative and here is partial positive. You know that chlorine is electronegative, so obviously it is going to attract the shared pair, and as a result it is going to acquire partial negative charge, right? So this is what is happening in this molecule. So what happens, so let us assume there here another molecule of HCl, again it is a polar, so that means partial positive and partial negative charge. So the force between these molecules, the force that exists between two polar molecules, right, due to the different poles facing each other, is something called as dipole force, right? So again, as the name suggests, see, in it already the dipole is present because it is polar, and even in this it is again the dipole is present because it is polar. So when two polar molecules exist side by side, there is a force that operates between them, and that force is something called as dipole force. You know that, I think you are familiar with the hydrogen bonding also. Hydrogen bond or hydrogen force is also, you can say it falls under the category of dipole only. See, when you get to see that the water, it is like this, right? So it is electronegative, so it develops partial negative, and it, as a result, the hydrogen develops partial positive charge. Now what happens, there is, suppose we assume another water molecule with same charges, because oxygen is electronegative, so obviously every time it is going to acquire partial negative and hydrogens will acquire partial positive charge. So when two water molecules are side by side, so that means the positive charge of the one molecule is going to attract the negative of the other molecule. So this force that exists between them is again a dipole force, right? As you can see, this oxygen is being attracted by this hydrogen and this oxygen is attracted by this hydrogen. So that means positive negative charges, whenever they are present, like the polar molecules I am talking about, suppose there is a polar molecule, it is going to attract the other polar molecule, and the force that exists between two polar molecules is something called as the dipole force, because they already possess the dipoles. Now what is the dipole induced dipole? So this kind of force we get to see in a polar molecule. So let us draw one polar molecule. So let's see HCl, suppose. So you know that it acquires partial negative and it acquires partial positive charge. And there is another molecule which is present, let us say B. It is not polar molecule, it is non-polar, right? So what happens, because this non-polar molecule or a neutral molecule you can say is present, you can say close to this polar molecule. Now what will happen, this negative charge will somehow repel the electron from this side, right? And these electrons will start moving that side. So as a result, it will acquire a partial positive charge and it will acquire a partial negative charge. See, in case of B, it was neutral. That means it has got a symmetrical distribution of electrons. But as it was close to the polar molecule, so the side which was present close to the neutral molecule developed an opposite pole on that. That means it induces the dipole. This is something called as induction of dipole or polarizability, you can say. So this polarizability, or you can say the bond that is indicated between the polar and the non-polar, is something called as dipole and induced dipole force, right? So this is the polarizability. And see, if we want more polarizability, that means the size of B should be big enough, right? Smaller is this polar molecule and bigger is this neutral molecule, more is going to be the polarizability, and more is the polarizability, obviously the strength of the force is going to be strong. So this is how we categorize the van der Waals force into three categories: the London force, dipole induced force and dipole-dipole. This is a weak force, but when we talk about dipole-dipole, it is stronger than London, but obviously it is weaker than the ion-ion interaction, because there the real charges are present and here only the you can say the magnitude of the charges are small, and even this is weaker than that, right? So this is what is the van der Waals force, and I think you are just now familiar what is the intermolecular force, what are the types, what is polar, non-polar. Now we are in a position to study the types of crystalline solids, because you are familiar with the forces operating between the molecules.